Welcome, everyone. I'm Amos Joseph, joined by my co-host, Brook Potter, and this is the 10K Rum Podcast. How's it going, Brook?
It's going great, Amos. Good to be back on the show, man. We're doing well. This is episode 54, if I'm not mistaken.
54. The second episode, however, under our new name. So things are going great. The new name hasn't completely screwed us over yet.
No, I tried to explain this to a couple guys, why we've changed the name. And we might have some listeners who've come in from the Glorious House of Gains podcast, where recently we got plugged, but not under the new name. We got plugged.
Yes. Now, first and foremost, shout out to the Glorious House of Gains podcast, to Beard So Strong, Robert Frank 615. 615. I was like, I thought I was thinking 614 or something. Jimmy Triceps, Joey Bag of Donuts. Who else am I missing?
Yeah, Vinny Bag of Chips, and
Chips.
Ray Worldwide.
Exactly. Everyone over there. They apparently Brook is like some sort of Magic Island man or something.
I'm a good luck charm.
Exactly. Met these guys, and 2 episodes after, they have their recap, and they have another episode after the Body Power event that Brook went to see him at, and they're still talking about this guy. And but the last episode they listened to was our last episode under the name Shitlord Preachers. Now we are the 10K Rum Podcast. So we kind of, hey, well, let's hope they, listen to a lot of episodes. And surprisingly, that one episode that they talked about where you were mentioning the Body Power event, they were really pleased. Like, hey, these guys spent 15 minutes talking about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Brook did a video, and then they were like, I think he's not from the UK. He's from Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. Who was it that was trying to explain all this to Robert Frank, and he's just like, yeah, this is really interesting. Yeah, I really like that guy. He said you're like one of the most positive guys he's ever met.
That's a crazy compliment, and I take it. I'm humbled by that. I really love the guys. The guys were really great. Amos, I know you're going to get a chance to meet them. Definitely do it. They're really great guys. But hopefully, in their last episode, they were talking about how they might want to have like an open spot for somebody to join the Glorious House again. So I'm just formally putting my request out there. Guys, I would love to fly out to New Jersey and join the Glorious House Gains podcast, at least for one episode, and maybe hit the gym after and get a sick fucking pump. But I really appreciate the guys hailing us out that time and plugging the podcast. We're all in this together.
Get tan and juicy as fuck.
I have to give props to Jimmy Triceps for that. He also shared our podcast on his Instagram story. That was very moving, and I'm glad we got a good response.
Yeah, and when I saw it, I was like, that's got the new artwork. This is what it looks like on the other side, like someone listening to your stuff, like especially someone with the following like they have.
Yes.
I know they talked about, and Robert Frank still doesn't really believe he's a celebrity, but yes, he is. What was it? A D-list celebrity?
Yes. As Joey was saying, like a D-, and maybe he could graduate to a D+.
Exactly.
But the big man is a big celebrity out here, and I really appreciate him taking the time out to plug the two of us. I know they didn't mention you by name.
That's fine. No, they met you, so that's an in though.
Exactly. And I did kind of milk it. I took a video clip of him shouting us out and put it everywhere, promoting the podcast. Right. I even boosted it on my fan page, just trying to get the word out. And the fact that he took the time to do that, I really appreciate that. And not all these creators help the little guys, and he's definitely one of those guys that did.
Yeah, there was the excuse me, there was the, what was it? He was talking about because he started talking about a lot of the I guess hinting at like the adpocalypse type stuff, the algorithm changes.
Yes.
And he doesn't talk about politics. Like ever. I mean, he always like tries to twist it into some like sort of. I mean, when I try to explain it to people, like, yeah, it's kind of a gym bro thing, and then they're like, and that has a negative connotation. Like, no, really, it's like that's what he does with, he'll talk about, make America great again, and he goes, what about fucking make the gym great again? It's just it's always turning it on its head to go and just to make content, make entertaining content. Yes. And now he's suffering from the algorithms because of his sort of toxic masculinity type, or in quotes, toxic masculinity, everyone. I'm not that I'm saying that. It's very ironic. It's how they're like just completely screwing over his channel. Like, his videos will get hundreds of thousands of views, but then the podcast itself gets like a few thousand, 10,000 on a good week kind of thing. When I look on his YouTube, channel,
the live
on
stream.
YouTube. Yeah. Now the podcast itself gets a lot of traction, like the downloads and such. But YouTube is one of those places you just can't. You're just not going to be able to fight it too much.
They have a very anti-masculine slant on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I mean, anti-masculine, anti-right wing, pretty much even center right or even center left in some cases.
Yeah, even I did an interview with a friend of mine. Maybe sometime we could get him on. Previous MMA fighter. It's a guy I lived with down in Ashford. But yeah, we were talking about him as a father and how he was raising his kids and the importance of being a positive role model and stuff like that. And I got demonetized like immediately after I uploaded that interview. And I was like, what is the issue about a father, being a good dad? And he's still married. He's not even a single father. He's just a family man. And it's just ridiculous. I don't know what these algorithms are and what they're trying to promote.
Yeah, it's definitely it's really confusing. And then even I don't know if I know you don't quite keep up as much on this, but so Steven Crowder from Lauder with Crowder basically, do you know he's basically going to war with Vox?
Yes, I've seen that they've been trying to mass flag him to get him off, and I saw those videos. Yes.
Yeah, and like people from Vox were actually like directly targeting him, and how he's showing like how how come they have they pretty much have YouTube in their back pocket. They can give him a call. Hey, this video, that guy, they're attacking me because Crowder's done all these rebuttal videos to Vox's videos. But then, him and his lawyer and all this stuff have to go to summits, have to actually send in legal paperwork to serve these people to get their point across. They can't just call them up and get a hold of them, which is showing favoritism, we'll just say.
Yes, I think that's fair. And considering we are on the same platform for the live stream, may not be a good idea to bite the hand that feeds us. But I completely agree. I think he was showing an example of one guy who does the videos of Vox videos. Whoever the presenter was on Twitter and basically called out Steven Crowder like, hey, this guy's harassing me. And YouTube responded to his Twitter. Like, they were so on point that they just jumped on the guy's Twitter and be like, yeah, we're going to look into this. But as you say, for Steven Crowder, he doesn't have anybody responding to his Twitter. He's not direct messaging anybody. And he's just not getting any traction.
Well, yeah, you see people like Ruben does this a lot. He'll just say, hey, at team YouTube or something, how come I had just had this video go up and it didn't go anywhere? No reply from YouTube. Yet a lot of these left-wing type of groups, they tweet, and within within the day, they're getting replies from YouTube. And it's Correct. Like, what the hell's going on?
No, exactly. It's
so, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Even for as I say, the stuff that I've done, and this is why Robert Frank and many others have kind of given up on. He doesn't do YouTube videos anymore. His big thing is Instagram, as well as on the Facebook side. I don't know if you heard about this, but CrossFit, the gym, lifting tires and
right,
kickboxing people, they've abandoned Facebook altogether.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I just heard him mention that on a podcast, and I was like, "What the hell's going on there?"
Yeah, it's the same thing. They promote health. people in good physiques and stuff like that. And that's all part of that runs against the inclusion and body positivity movement. So showing a guy or a girl or a woman or a boy or whatever, or something in between that's in good shape, apparently it's offensive to fat people.
I mean, you could you can't post anything about positive fatherhood. Positively like promoting fatherhood, parenthood, responsibility, self-discipline, success. But it is totally okay to show, and this is kind of the problem, is you can show, I'm sorry, but grotesque fat people, preteens in drag.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's the big one now. That really pisses me off. You could show. I mean, this isn't even like, and this is not to sound anything like the whole, like the 80s and 90s. Parents, we're all afraid of like rap music,
right?
This is like, you're literally like, because that's just okay, the gangster mentality, the violence that might be portrayed in some videos or songs. That's, these people are adults. They're just doing whatever. So you can't really stop, that's just like expression. But now you actually have promotions of all sorts of things, unhealthy behavior as normal. It's like, if, you make a rap song and it's very much just like, I don't care what you think about me. I'm just going to do this. Some people like it. Some people don't. The whole fat culture is you have to accept it.
Correct.
It's not like, I mean, if fat people just like went out and did whatever they wanted, I really wouldn't care.
I mean, we could speak as two fat people, so we have fat people privilege. No, I completely agree.
Hey, I identify as curvy. Okay,
pleasantly plump. Yeah, totally. But yeah, I mean, I'm not offended by people who are fit, or I don't look at any of those kinds of things and have any kind of emotional issue. I don't know. Do you get a response watching like Arnold Schwarzenegger or some of these guys?
I mean, when Arnold Schwarzenegger is operating machine gun, I mean, there's other responses, but
what?
I'm kidding. This is.
Are you saying that a bloodbath turns you on? Is this it? Like men with big guns?
There's a reason men are drawn to movies and shows and such with explosions and guns.
Right. It speaks to our primordial, ancestral brain.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like, it's violence times 1,000, and we're not involved in it. So we're like, but there's something about what you see, you get kind of drawn into it. You're actually, it's like you're there. It's, right. I mean, what did we used to, you look at our ancestors, what did they really get into was, they had to have this drive and ambition to kill animals. Well, now we get to do that on a larger scale. And there's something about that motivates us, kind of drives us, entices us, so to speak. So anyways, that's the response. I mean, but I'm not sitting there looking at Arnold and like, oh, what was
grabbing the lube?
Oh God. No,
like,
no.
He's grabbing the M16. Give me the lube. This is going to be like a story on my Instagram now, right?
Oh my God. Oh boy. We're going to get letters. No.
No, I fully get what you're saying. And I mean, this is a big thing. I don't know if you've read Jack Donovan and his series of books, The Ways of Men, Becoming the Barbarian and stuff. Yeah. And he talks about that. He talks about being a man. There is an innate conquest desire in men for excellence, and it doesn't mean necessarily over people. It could be over themselves, over their natural environment, whatever the case might be. And we don't have that anymore in this society, right? I mean, We don't really have struggle in the West. We're pretty comfortable. But that's why things like video games, somewhat violent rap, even violent porn, these things are kind of thriving. Ironically, it's a lot of women that are watching the violent porn, if that's if that's any kind of indicator.
Well, violence is a big part of human nature. And I'm not talking like, violence as a general thing is not restricted to just, fights or whatever. It's like we had to violently hunt prey. We had to violently fight for mates. We had to violently fight for a lot of different things. And just, that's why working out gives us a certain feeling. That's why, accomplishing things through physical exertion gives us a certain feeling. But yeah, there's something about that which is in us that makes us just enjoy violence. Sometimes it gets a little weird and people like watching some really weird violence type of stuff, which that's a whole nother thing. But violence as a whole is pretty much appeals to almost everyone on some level, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, this is something. One of the most remarkable accomplishments of Western civilization is the rule of law. If you really think about it, people come together to make an agreement, whether it's a constitution or whatever the case might be, and they decide to abide by a piece of paper and a consensus. They hold an idea as paramount. And if you think about it, that is actually a very remarkable thing. Because what is it that we have without the rule of law? You have the rule of force, and it's basically mob rule. Whoever has the biggest gun wins. So violence, in a sense, if you don't have the rule of law and we don't have discussion and debate, the only way that we get anything done is by force. And that is the ultimate truth. Like, if something terrible happens, whatever peaceful society we think you have, if there's a stronger force that comes in and invades and wipes it out, let's just be real. All your ideals don't hold up to force. And everybody knows this instinctively. We don't like to admit it, but that's why there's such a desire to curtail it. But they don't understand that this has been part of our nature for thousands and millions of years, possibly. And it's not as easy just to say,
right,
let's just turn it off,
Well, yeah, while we can keep it under certain type of controls, we have sports, we have just ways we can sort of get that violent energy out of our system, express that healthily without having to necessarily kill anyone. You just
I mean, violence doesn't necessarily always mean that, but we're seeing increasing frustration amongst young people and these types of things. I think that's a large reason why we have people acting out, doing these violent acts, possibly mass shootings and other things, is because we haven't channeled. And it's not just men. Before the feminist harpies start screaming, women throughout history have been very violent. There's some Viking warrioresses that will really make your head turn. But yeah, it's something we have to, for want of a better word, embrace and understand. And in this society, it's not accepted. Like, nobody's accepting anybody doing anything violent, of any kind. It's really come down to words and other things like that. But I think the video games has definitely helped. That's been like a pressure release for the young people. The military.
But then the video games have turned into something else, though.
Well, I'm not a big gamer, so enlighten me. What has it turned into?
Well, I mean, you're saying, the violence gets to be, sort of, there is a bit of a release valve when it comes to video games, but then that kind of turns into a cop-out for a lot of people. Now you have the young men that are just home playing video games all day and extremely antisocial.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's there's a lot to that, in the sense, the MGTOW, the young men, playing video games and watching porn rather than actually going out and interacting in the real world. I I don't know if that's a cultural shift or that's just bad parenting. I'm not entirely sure. And I think that the data is still out on that. So I'm definitely looking forward to learning more about that. But yeah, I mean, let's face it, as a species, as human beings, you know, we are not accustomed to living in this global community that we have now, where everything is interconnected. And I mean, you could be halfway around the world in 24 hours. You could be in an entirely different country. You know, food, if there was any kind of emergency, food and supplies can reach anywhere in the world within 24 hours, relief. You know, we've really padded the world. We've taken a very violent and aggressive planet and we've tamed it by our technology, by our energy and everything else, and our innovation. To the point now where for young people, especially when they look at it, there's not much point to anything. You don't have a struggle anymore, especially young men. And sometimes the only way you can grow as an individual is by pressing up against something, you know, that you think is stronger than you and breaking through it. So growth only comes from struggle. And we don't have a lot of that in this modern age.
That's always, it's funny when you hear that phrase, you know, growth coming through struggle, and then you see some like movie or show where like the villain is trying to like, you know, destroy the world so that mankind can struggle and be great again because we're so comfortable. And it's always made out to be twisted. And then they say, no, but mankind's better than all that. And it's like, well, you're both wrong. Don't destroy society, but don't just expect society to rise to a point where, you know, we're just going to be completely free from our violent tendencies or our need for struggle. I think there just needs to be, if anything, we need to incorporate more ways to create more ways that we can like still be human, you know, be the humans that we've been for the longest time, while still progressing as a species to be more, you know, well, more enlightened, if you want to say, or smarter beings. Like, you remember, so you remember Star Trek Voyager?
Yes. I remember. Do you remember from Star Trek Voyager?
I know you do. You remember? So you remember that alien race that were the hunters that they met?
Vaguely. They were like in very small ships, and they were kind of like piratey.
Yeah, they had they were like taller and bigger aliens. They were called the Hirogen.
Okay.
And they were basically these, like, everything they did was the hunt. You know, it was, so there was this whole thing about how they were, you know, so they would always hunt different aliens, different creatures, because they were cunning. They were hunting Voyager at one point. They would like, they did all this stuff. Well, when one of the episodes you start off in the episode and you realize like Voyager is like in a big holodeck. Like everyone's in a holodeck.
Oh yes, I remember that.
So they basically started, because they were so intrigued by the holodeck, they figured instead of wasting time and energy pursuing actual prey, getting hurt, and all this thing, why not continue the hunt through a holodeck?
Right.
Where you can still maintain control and you can hunt anything you want. Like it's like an evolution using technology to carry on their traditions.
Yes.
Without sacrificing their, you know, they can evolve.
Yes.
And be more enlightened without sacrificing where they came from.
Sure. I believe that's what we've done as a society. You know.
Yeah, I mean, instead of, you know, walking down a road, you know, as nomads or hunter-gatherers and killing whoever we come across, we have sports.
Yeah, we got sports. If you really want to get into it, you can go and join the military. And as our friend Conk in the chat is saying, you also got and I was about to say this, the virtual reality I think is going to be huge, not just for that release, but I think there's therapeutic aspects to that as well, in terms of giving people that environment and stuff like that. If the technology really takes off, I think it'll have a really good benefit to the society.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, people can be violent, man. You know, if you look at the stats for domestic violence, I mean, yes, women tend to be more prone to domestic violence, but it's almost a very even split. They just win out by a little bit being the victims, but both men and women are the victims of domestic violence, right? And again, I think that's a contagion of not having avenues to channel our frustrations in as a society. You know, as you say, we're living in the age of decadence. There's no struggle. There really isn't any struggle.
Yeah.
Which is why we're fighting about things like words. You know, like, you know, we're using the wrong pronoun. You know, we're looking for a fight just in all the wrong places, because we don't really have an enemy, you know?
The enemy is the patriarchy, Brook.
You're right. So you make shit up. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Now, since we're on the topic of violence, I figured we'd segue into this.
Yes.
What happened to you? Was it today or was it yesterday that you got kidnapped?
Oh, my kidnapping. Yes. No, it was yesterday. Interesting story. Yeah. I was on my way back from the gym on Saturday morning, and I get a text from a friend of mine. She's an erotic photographer. Maybe we'll have her on the show sometime, you know.
Oh boy.
Just to spice things up. A friend of mine, she's also from Trinidad. I don't know if to say her name or not, but I could plug her Instagram. I think it's the Lady and Her Plants. I think it's at the Lady and Her Plants. So if anybody's interested, they can look her up. And I've known her for years. She's a good friend of mine. And she calls me up and is like, Potter, where are you? I was like, well, I'm getting back from the gym. You know, I'm literally walking on the street. And she's like, all right, I'm going to be there in 20 minutes. I was like, what? Yeah. She's like, pack your shit. We're going to the beach. So I was like, okay. But anyway, she has a reputation for being notoriously late for everything she does. So an hour and a half later, she finally shows up. And, you know, it's like, okay, I don't have any like beach clothes per se. You know, all of my clothes in the UK are basically cold weather clothes. So I basically went in my gym wear, right? I had like a gym shorts, and I was wearing the toxic masculinity shirt and stuff like that. And yeah, I jumped in the car and I met her friend. We'll just call her Green Eyes. And it was an interesting trip. We actually drove all the way for 2.5 hours. We went down to a place called Hastings, which is in the south coast of England. Beautiful day. It is a beach, and it's not a beach by, you know, Caribbean standards, right? You know, there was like one patch of sand that was clearly imported to make it, you know, for the kids to play in, but the rest of it is like gravel. It's stone. And then you got to go into the water, and there's actually like a little sand island in the water kind of thing. And that's as good as it gets.
A British beach.
A British beach, yeah. It's as good. I think it's as good as you could expect for England, you know. But not. I mean, I hear if you go more, I guess more towards the west, so towards Cornwall and to the Wales side, I hear the beaches are better. So I don't know. But it was a really good time, and I have to say, her friend Green Eyes, very captivating young woman, very interesting. She and I got along very well. I'll say that. But the whole thing was kind of like a therapy session, because we're all kind of going through our breakups, which was interesting. So, you know, my friend, the Lady and Her Plants, she's recently gone through a breakup. Green Eyes has gone through a breakup. I've gone through a breakup. So the whole conversation in the car is like, oh, you know, these people are shit, and you know, why do people do this? And they're asking me like, why do men do this? And I'm like, well, why do chicks do this? Right? It's pretty cool.
And they're like, shut up, stop making sense, Brook.
Yes, some of the things I said definitely silenced them. Like the phrase I use very often is monogamy is earned. Right. Of course, this is from, you know, Rollo Tomasi's work and the work of the Red Pill community. So it goes on the concept of spinning plates. You know, people don't date exclusively, but if you want to be exclusive, you have to prove yourself worthy for the man's attention to give you that exclusivity. So they were asking me some questions about, you know, different stuff like that. Like, why would a man do this? Why would a man do that? And when I said that, my friend, the lady in her plants, she's like, I hate that phrase. Right? It's like, I hate when you say that. I say you could hate it all you want, but it's still true. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It was good. And in fact, later on, we actually got another friend in. I'll just call her the housekeeper. She came with her 3 kids and a dog. And I'm not talking like a small dog. This is like a big dog. And this little petite little woman, the housekeeper, is there managing, I believe, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and like an 8 or 9-month-year-old, plus this ridiculously large dog that was slobbering over everything.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's managing this whole thing. I have to give that woman top respect, because she was a boss at just juggling that whole thing. Eventually I got put on babysitting duty. So anybody's checked my Instagram, there's actually, I tell this whole story in my Instagram story. And there's a picture of me with the little kid. And he was fascinated with the Thor's hammer that I have around my neck for the listeners. So I put him on my lap and I'm like, what's going on, little man? And he goes for the hammer and he's like playing with the hammer. And it's pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
Got you a little baby fever, huh?
I wouldn't say I do. No, definitely not. Although people did say it did look good on me. Anybody interested? Check my Instagram story. If I look good with the baby, if they think the baby's mine, In fact, I had a rum and coke on the table that I was, drinking, and the little man went for the rum and coke. And it's like, Jesus, he really could be mine, So it was a really good day. I have to thank the lady in her plants for. Because I wasn't going to come out. My flatmate is coming back from a foreign trip today. So this, I was going to clean the house yesterday. I've got my laundry going on. I've got, anybody who doesn't know, I build Lego from time to time as part of my therapy, right? To help my inner kid. So I had Lego all over the living room. I was building this massive 1 meter tall Saturn V rocket that, I showed Amos some pictures. So yeah, the house needed a lot of work. So I was planning to spend my Saturday doing that. It was such a lovely day. I'm so glad that these guys, these girls pulled me out. It was a little bit like having 3 girlfriends, right? Right? It's like, because they're all over the place, and like they're shopping and they're buying, dream catches and different. Just it was chaos. It was chaos. But thankfully, literally they were buying dream catches and what was the other thing? Oh, and jewelry. We went into some kind of new age jewelry shop, and it's rocks and crystals, and they're all talking to each other. Yeah, it was wild. It was wild, but it was a very good day. We did miss. Now, I mean, for those who don't know, Hastings is kind of hilly. There's a mountain. There's not mountains, but hills. And you can go from the top of the hill. There's Hastings Castle, which is a ruin from the Battle of Hastings in 1066 AD. But you could get these inculators, which are these diagonal elevators that go down the mountain to get to the beach. So that was pretty trippy. I'd never been in one of those before, and apparently these inculators are from the 1800s. So
it must be really reliable.
Yeah, I mean, well, they don't make them like that anymore. But the Victorians, they knew what they were doing when they built this stuff, because it's still running to this day. I mean, I can't think of anything that lasts more than 3 years, far less a couple of hundreds. So that's pretty cool. If you come out to the UK, we'll have to take a trip out to Hastings.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It was really good. It was really good. And I was glad that I got to meet, especially Green Eyes. Green Eyes is fascinating. Might look to meet her again. But yeah, it was a good time.
Green Eyes. Have her on the list. Well, that sounds like you had a lot of fun, man. It's good that you kind of had a little, I guess, it was almost like a support session, but in your favor a lot more than.
yeah. It was, it's important to have fun, and this goes back to my Lego comment. I was kind of like all work all the time. It's all about, focus on, getting to the gym, getting healthy, the diet, the work, the podcast, and it was all work all the time. And I've come to realize how important it is to have fun, right? To actually do things that you enjoy. So right now I don't have a car out here, so I'm relying on public transportation or my friends to take me places. So I don't get very far. I get into London very easily. The areas were around us and stuff. But yeah, these little road trips, they're pretty cool. It took, as I said, 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back. We left at about 12. I got home at, let's say, minutes to 1. And ironically, I left my phone in her car, the lady in her plants, and she'd already left. And I said, look, just drop it for me tomorrow. I know you're tired and stuff. And she actually came back and said, no, here's your phone. And she gave it back to me. And I was like, wow, a lot of respect for that. So she's great. She's a great friend of mine. I'm glad that she actually did manage to get me out of the house and, to introduce me to her friends and stuff. It was good. It was good.
Well, I went ahead last night. So if anyone who I guess follows multiple people that I'm connected with, first off, I started up a new job, and this whole last week was a pretty long week, to say the least. I had first gotten the Monday off because it was Memorial Day.
Yes.
But then where I worked, they said, well, you're still in training, and we want to get people to train you more, but you'll be missing a day. So how about you come in Saturday as well, just to make up the time, and then you'll get Sunday off and come back Monday. And I'm like, first I was a bit iffy on it. I thought, why not? So Saturday, yesterday, comes around and I work and I go home and I'm just like, I got one day, and what am I going to do? Well, I'm not just going to, lounge around and do this. I'm like, oh, liven up the things a little bit, I guess. And me being me, I guess, I never have the best experience when it comes to any type of like whiskey or rum. Maybe I'm not preparing it properly. I know Brook over there is looking at me.
Amateur hour.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, I just want something that's going to go down easy, like really easy, and just get me drunk. So I'm like looking around the liquor store, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to spend a lot of money. So I go and I get this 750 milliliter bottle of white wine.
Ooh,
yeah,
nice.
It's like $12. Yeah.
Ooh.
And then I got some food and just eating a little, and I drank the whole thing. So I thought, I wasn't feeling it come on as quickly because I was like, I'm drinking a lot of this, and I'm not. And then boom,
all at once.
Yeah, and so I was like, man, this is too boring to have on my own. Like, what am I gonna do? Just, watch the watch the room.
Watch Arnold Schwarzenegger and grab the lube.
Oh God, no, no, Brooke, no.
Oh, you weren't that drunk. Okay.
No. You won't catch me dead that drunk.
There's not enough beer in the world.
No. I messaged some of our friends over at Sarcasm and Liberty. And then I mean, I can type if I focus hard enough when I'm drunk.
Right.
But I wanted to get the message across, I am drunk. So oh God, conk.
He's great, man.
Yeah. Conk in the chat is saying lube is for beta. It's got to raw dog it. Yeah, no.
Amen. Preach, brother. Preach.
So I messaged a couple of the guys, and one of them was like, I'm not doing anything right now. Let's hop on the Sarcasm Liberty channel. We'll just do an impromptu live stream of you being drunk, and we'll talk about whatever. So I get on, and I'm just I'm watching it back today, and I'm like, I can't really, am I drunk? Really?
It looked like you were very happy. I haven't seen the whole thing, but the bit I did see in the beginning.
How it feels is just I was just really like loose and happy. And
Yes, you felt great.
we talked about sports. But I was more commenting on like just silly things that I think sports happens in sports. Then we started talking about I brought up something about Mance Raider, which is like a big anarchist guy on like Twitter. He does a lot of memes. And he got banned from Twitter because he made a comment. So he made a comment about like shooting someone in the head.
Wow.
And Twitter banned or suspended something. But in context, he was trying to describe quote unquote the justice system in an anarchist society.
Okay.
Like if it's a criminal and they've done a heinous act, shoot them. I was like, but just the way it went about, context didn't matter so much to Twitter, and he got in trouble for it.
Right.
And then so I started kind of going on a little rant about like how I think anarchists are just a bunch of, they get a little too into themselves, you know. I thought it'd be like there's little like, you know, anarcho social justice warriors.
Yes, yeah, I could see that.
You know, everything government does is wrong. It's like I understand the disdain libertarians and anarchists have for government, as you and I, you know, tend to, you know, sympathize with a lot of what anarchists observe and what they think about. Like, we're like, yeah, government does suck, but we are in the real world, and pushing, you know, the Rothbard button, you know, to eliminate all government, and people will die. And I mean, wouldn't then pushing the Rothbard button be a violation of the non-aggressive principle?
I would agree. I mean, if we did that today and we just, as you say, hit the Rothbard button and the welfare system dried up, the subsidies dried up,
police,
the
fire,
regulations dried up. Yeah, police and fire. I mean, that's not really government, that's local government, but I guess if you want to include that, okay, yeah. It would be bad. It would be very bad because we would no longer have that institution of the rule of law. Right.
At least
because
the perception of it would go away, because people can behave themselves.
Yes.
But like the law is mainly for those who can't. The punishment acts as a deterrent for those who maybe are a little more unstable. Whereas whereas I think most people just kind of want to mind their own business and just be a good person.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, people could also misbehave quite nicely as well. So I don't want to give it a pass. Like, you know, it's all good. But if people don't share your values, like if people do not share the non-aggression principle as a common value, the utopian society will never work, right? The anarchist, the ANCOM, ANCAP society is never going to work. It wouldn't work for ANCOM either, the anarcho-communist. Scaling back, definitely. I'm in favor of that. More power to local governments, sure. But this kind of dogmatic, anything the government does is bad.
I mean, government is literal slavery. And it's like,
it's a stretch. It's a stretch. I mean, this is going back to the conversation we had with our previous guest, Caitlin. You know, this idea that, you know, because the state is illegitimate, anything it does is illegitimate, therefore I just oppose it on principle. Not productive. Not productive at all.
Yeah, and then again, yeah, the whole thing with, you know, political strategy we talked about with her too is you want to enact change. You need to, I mean, not that she didn't say this, but I'm just thinking is you want change, you got to do something. You actually do have to be involved in politics.
Correct. To hit the Rothbard button is to do something, right? Is to do something about government.
Yeah, but really? Yeah, it's like, there's nothing wrong with you want your anarchist society, but you don't want to actually institute real change. You just want to go. I mean, there's a lot of anarchists on the internet that will talk about high ideals and utopias, and they'll just retweet and and quote tweet a whole bunch of people and just say privatize everything, when in reality a lot of what they do, a lot of how they're able to communicate, a lot of their activism is unfortunately thanks to government in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a tough thing. Well, as I say, I don't think utopia is achievable unless you're talking about mushrooms, magic mushrooms that are named utopia. Then they're very achievable. But in this conversation, they're definitely not. As I say, you can't have actual anarchy. For instance, how do you know what side of the road to drive on if you don't have some kind of laid down law, right? I mean, if everybody was just allowed to drive on any side of the road you want, then you really do have chaos, right? That's probably the best. Nobody would be able to get anywhere. People would be running into each other. Kind of like driving in Venezuela at the moment. That's kind of how it'd be. Or maybe, didn't you tell me about the driving in Taiwan was pretty crazy? Like you have to be psychic to know where things are going or anything like that.
Driving in Taiwan?
Is it as chaotic as Venezuela and Latin America? Because that was the craziest driving I've ever seen in my life.
Pretty close.
Close. I think like the Middle East might maybe cap it. I haven't been out there.
I mean, I drove in Taiwan when I visited back in 2016. My mom had to kind of get me to settle down a bit because I got a little too into it. Like,
driving bumper cars.
Well, not even bumper cars. It's just like, I can just drive around and speed. Like I was going up a mountain, and roads are very narrow.
Yeah.
And there's people parked on the side of the road. So what do? Go around them. But I'm like going around them at like, 30, 40 miles an hour, just zigzag and zipping around. And my mom's like, slow down. And I'm like, like it just.
Yeah. Cool it, Jack. Take it easy.
Yeah. Because I'm like, there's, no laws, no rules.
Fuck your laws. Fuck your road. Road rules.
I mean, but that's how most Taiwanese treat the road.
Sure.
It's just, I mean,
controlled chaos.
Oh, it very much is. And here's what's hilarious. So here, here in Minnesota, well, not Minnesota, here in the States, for the most part, your roads, your traffic, patterns and stuff tend to be fairly organized. There's traffic that moves. I mean, regardless of your accents, you have people that are driving around in a very collective fashion. Everyone obeys the rule. Most people are obeying the rules, following the courtesies and all that. Yeah, you have your certain cities that do some crazy shit, but as a whole, it's pretty collective. Like you just look, hey, this is very organized. In a country that is basically pushing independence, free thinking, individuality, do your own thing.
Right.
Now you go to Taiwan, which is very socialized society and government in some ways, very collectivist culture, very collective type of people. Yet the road is as anarchist as you can think of. It's
there is a side of the road to drive on, though, right?
Yeah.
Which is what? The left or the right?
The right side.
Oh, the wrong side. Okay. But I mean, yeah, at least there's a semblance of everybody having a side of the road. They know which side to drive on, right?
Yeah, but that's like where it stops.
Right. That's like the constitution of the road is drive on the left. Drive on the right.
Well, I was telling some people about this, and it was interesting to explain this. I said, like, what happens is a lot of Westerners or white people, oh my gosh, I'm racist now.
Not always the same thing, but okay.
Okay. So a lot of Westerners, like, Australians, Europeans, Americans, such that go to Taiwan. When they first get there, they're very much like, hey, I'm just going to follow the rules and drive, right?
Sure.
Wrong.
Really?
They try and try and try, and it's more trouble than it's worth.
To follow the rules.
I mean, like I'd say, like there are times, yeah, you're on a freeway. It's not just everyone going whatever. So you do have some organization, but like when it comes to city driving,
yes.
So my dad, when I was real little, my dad and I were driving, and oh hey, it's the human question. No, you're not late, man. Just you can go back and watch the beginning of the stream. Anyways, we so we're driving to go see a friend in another part of town, and I'm in the back seat and of my dad's, my dad's driving, and we were gonna go meet up at a friend's house, kind of like other. We had a lot of, my dad had a lot of like friends of the family who were like other Americans or Canadians or even some cases an Australian or European person. Basically all the foreigners.
Right.
We don't get together because we were all connected through different groups that my dad had worked with. So we're going to this place, and we're driving in the street. So we're just downstairs of their apartment, like trying to find parking. Well, my dad's like turning in somewhere, and he absolutely had the right of way. And there was like 6 or 7 of these Taiwanese guys in scooters that felt my dad cut them off. My dad just kept driving, and he heard them yelling out there like, hey, what are you doing? And he goes, hey, I had the right of way. So he's just driving along, obeying the rules. And one of their helmets hit the back of our car.
What? How?
They threw it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in anger. So my dad pulls over, gets out of the car, and it's like 6 or 7 of these guys. And these guys get off their scooters and they're walking towards my dad. And my dad's like, come on, like, really? And an altercation is about to happen. And so my dad's friend, who's his house we're going to go to, he's upstairs and he hears the commotion. He just rushes down. He's this like 6'2", big, like Canadian guy, built like a hockey player.
Right.
And really heavy accent in his Chinese, just walks out. Is there a problem here? And then these guys are like, no problem. They just get away. My dad was a bigger guy too, but it was just the way, like, oh, another guy, like. And my dad had told me when I was growing up in Taiwan, like a lot of the, especially like Americans and such that he came across, not one of them didn't have a story involving fighting locals.
Really?
Yeah. Or getting in some sort of altercation that they had to like either get away from or just deal with it.
Right.
For following certain
cultures.
I mean, yeah. And it's not like, it's just the way the things are with the roads and driving. If you try to follow the rules, sometimes you actually pay a price for that. Sometimes you also pay a price for decency. Like personal space is not a thing in Taiwan.
Right.
In
what way? Just like walking around, somebody's gonna like jam up on my ass?
Well, you walk by people and they bump into you. What do you typically do?
Yeah,
sorry.
I mean,
I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah.
None of that in Taiwan.
Really? That's just you're in my way.
I had my dad actually noticed this. He noticed I was almost conditioned to do this. We would be walking. So we came back to Minnesota back in 2005. So I'm like going places with him, and he would call me out on this, and I didn't know what was going on. We would be, you've been here in Minnesota, open spaces.
Yeah.
Very just walking around, you have a lot of space. I would be like in a hallway and there's no one else but like him, and I were walking in the hallway and I'm like right up next to him.
Really?
And he was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just walking." He goes, "What? You don't have to be so close." And then
Really?
he started noticing like we are like, because I grew up in this. He
Yes.
just lived in it for a few years. So it's easy for him to break out of like, yeah, back into Minnesota, open spaces, not as densely populated. People aren't all everywhere.
Yeah.
For me, it's just normal.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
So
I didn't know that.
so I kind of had to break out of that and just kind of like,
Give
back off a
people
bit.
personal space.
But
That's pretty
yeah,
wild, man. So, I mean, there is anarchy on the roads of Taiwan.
in a culture and society that is very collective, whereas here, there's a whole lot less anarchy in a place where we tend to almost like it. you know, our nature and our desire for freedom and independence and just individuality don't quite make it onto certain arenas like the road. You get
Yes.
people, but it's just, that tends to be like frowned upon for the most part.
Sure. Sure. I mean, culturally, it's frowned down upon, so I could understand that.
Right.
But yeah, that's an interesting experience. I mean, I've never driven um, in Taiwan. I've never driven. I couldn't possibly drive in Venezuela. I hear Morocco, the Middle East in general, it's pretty bad. In fact, if you obey the speed limits or you obey the stop signs, you might get shot. So that there's an added incentive, right?
I mean,
Um,
I always figured I always just the way I always figured that like road like rules of the road and such I mean, even when I came here, when I came back to the States, just the way I go about like tight spaces and such.
mhm. On the
Oh,
road,
yeah, I'll drive through tight spaces just fine. And
right?
people are just like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, so what? You know, I had to, I'll come within like a couple inches of like hitting a mirror on something. And, if you do that here, like people are freaking out.
Yeah,
Do that in
yeah.
Taiwan. That's just a normal day driving in a neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah.
My family and I went to South Dakota to like basically like the Black Hills, the Badlands, and Mount Rushmore. That whole area, just bunch of stuff to do. Well, we were driving through the mountains, and we're about to go through this area, and they basically come up to us. People, some of like the tour, like the guides and the people who work there, come to us. Hey, just so you're aware, that's a very narrow passage. Your car can make it through, but it's just very narrow. Please be careful. My dad's like, "Oh, okay." So we get in a car, drive on through. He goes, "That's no big deal." And I'm looking, I'm like, "Oh yeah, it was like driving in Taiwan."
There you go. There you go. Trinidad was a bit like that as well. There were some roads that were really tight, especially going up the hills. And as you say, there are people parked on one side, and there's really only enough room for one. But I think the worst road, if I'm not, I think it's in Chile, and you may have seen it on an episode of Top Gear, where there's it's not even paved. It's up in the mountains. There's no guardrail. You're literally on the edge. And if another car or truck or anything comes, that's like the end. And so many people die on that road. And I think that's why Latin America still holds that dear space in my head about the worst drivers and the worst driving environment. But yeah, it's pretty bad.
I mean, it's even like if you know much people who know much about like different cities, like some people will say the worst driving is usually in the coastal cities. Um, whereas like for so if, here this is just like a look at different things that happen. Like in San Francisco, I've heard like speed people driving could be going either 20 miles over the speed limit or 20 miles under the speed limit. So it's chaos. No
Right.
one's really driving the same speed. But then if you go to like Chicago, everyone is driving the same speed,
Right.
20 miles over the speed limit.
Everybody's speeding.
Everybody's speeding at the same time. So
That was Trinidad too. In fact, we had a speed limit that was kind of more of a suggestion up until recently, and only under the threat of enforcement, and we got like the first of the radar guns. That what you guys have with the cops use to time you. We got like 4 of them, and for the first time in the history of possibly the entire country ever, people started obeying the speed limit, right? And it was a pretty low speed limit too. I think it was about 80 kilometers, so that's probably 50 miles an hour, which is pretty slow as things go. But nobody even knew what the speed limit was until, because everybody's just zipping along, driving at like, I don't know, 100 miles an hour, just cruising. Nobody ever took on the speed limit up until recently. And I've seen this in the US as well, where if you're on the highway, for instance, and there's a cop car, there's usually a bunch of traffic behind it because the cop car is driving exactly at the speed limit. And they know if anybody overtakes them, that person is speeding.
Right. Also, if there's a cop car on the side of the road, you want to be careful of that because everyone's going to slow down.
To look and see what's going on.
No. He's just sitting there watching.
Oh, right. Everybody slows down just because he's there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's a cop there. We better go the speed limit.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, but thank God for Waze, right? I mean, technology, in my opinion, I might be wrong, but I think technology is going to give us as close to an ANCAP society as possible, right? Like I've started to notice this in the UK. Like technology is the answer to the Leviathan. We used to have, well, we still do. We have an exceedingly bloated civil service out here in the UK, and it does everything. It processes, passports, births, deaths, marriage, all this stuff, right? But of course, technology is now coming where people can do all the information online. All the databases are online. All the information can be checked back and forth. There's no need for this conglomerate of civil servants processing and pushing paper and all this kinds of other stuff. To the point now, if you come to the UK, you don't meet a customs officer if you're British or a European citizen, right? This will probably be true until Brexit, right? You come to a booth. I don't know if you've seen this. You come to a booth, you put your passport in, it scans your face, and then it opens the door and you walk in, right? 3 or 4 seconds, you're done. That's your immigration control, your border control, right? So what does that mean? That means that the civil service and all these other institutions that the government is supposed to be responsible for can be and are being replaced with technology. And the more that it's that kind of control and processing is taken out of the hands of government and automated, it's the less power and influence they can really have, over our daily lives. So I think that's what's going to help shrink the size of government at least in the short term.
Right. I mean, the idea that technology will lead to a more, at least, less government is, we learned, our good friend Eric Laprice told us about. It's called crypto anarchists.
Right.
The idea that technology is the answer to leading to a more anarchist society.
Right.
I
think that's true.
I'm looking in the chat here. The human question is saying his main critique of the ANCAP thing is no sustained culture. Well, that's the thing, is culture. It's a culture that is voluntarily created instead of a culture. Like, people have culture regardless of government, but unfortunately culture can be manipulated by government. Now you don't have government. Culture is allowed to grow, and so Conk is saying, to volunteer culture. The culture is created on its own. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that is the risk in the sense, because you can have a person that decides, well, I'm going to take all this freedom and use it to become a dictator and take away the freedom, right? This is the Borders argument about a free society. Is if people don't unify around the principles of freedom, and you import, for instance, a lot of people who don't share that ideology, they're just going to create some kind of establishment to enforce their new ideology. That is kind of the inherent risk of all out, anarchy.
Right. Now, Brian Monroe in the chat is saying the fact that if we look at China as an example, technology is used to give government more control over the population, like their social credit system. True. That's
it could
what you
work
have.
both ways.
Yeah,
Completely
because
agree.
technology can be a central system, or you can have open platforms. You can also have like the blockchain, stuff like that basically allow decentralization of the technology. I mean, Bitcoin has a system, but no one controls it. I think they've had like the top hackers in the world try to hack Bitcoin. Just can't do it.
Yeah. The blockchain technology is pretty fucking brilliant.
Yeah, and it completely breaks away from some sort of central system, central planner.
Yeah, because it can't be copied. That's the big thing, right? It's a fixed piece of data, and it's just there, right? It's going to be there forever until the device is destroyed or something. So, I mean, yeah, I agree. There is a risk of technology being, we could get Skynet. There's another Arnold Schwarzenegger reference. Should we grab the lube? It's
Oh God.
But of course, technology is just a tool, and it could be used for good or evil, just like anything else. Guns, money, hookers, blow. It's all it's all part of this big circus that we're part of.
Now, speaking once again of Arnold Schwarzenegger, did you see the trailer for the new Terminator movie?
Oh, are we going to go down this road? I did see it.
I didn't even think about it, and I was like, "Oh, look, what was it, Sarah Connor?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of cool." Yeah, wait, it's all girls. This was someone brought it up, and I was like, "It's all women." Oh,
yeah. Well, and an old Arnold Schwarzenegger as a T-600.
see, how does him as a cybernetic organism? How does he get old?
Well, the flesh is living tissue that ages, so it's flat, living organism over a metal skeleton. So they kind of covered that in the last one where John Connor and the chick went back in time and they did some shit. They built a time machine. Ironically, this is the plot out of one of the Sarah Connor Chronicles, the TV series. They fucking did it in the movie, so it's like it was really shit. But he waits around for them. So I think they transport from like 1985 and they come to like 2005 or whatever. And he waits.
Genesis?
Yeah, Genesis, that's the one. And the T-600 waits for them, and he's older when they arrive. And I'm assuming he's now continued into this new one. He's still there. And
oh my God. Someone just the human question. Terminator harem sci-fi anime crossover.
I'm sure there's a hentai something out there. Not that I know about these things.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the question, of course, with the whole Terminator thing is, I mean, the whole arc of the story was John Connor, right? John Connor was the savior of humanity. He defeated Skynet, whatever, right? Whatever.
You had a whole bunch of you had a whole bunch of like stories around sort of keeping him alive. You had, what was it? The first ones showed like the conception of John Connor.
Yes.
The Sarah Connor had a baby with Chip Reese, which was a guy from the future.
Yes.
Was it Chip Reese?
Spoilers.
Oh my gosh. That's like the first movie.
I know, but some people may not have seen it, bro. Be considerate. Don't be a dick.
Dude, we like, you can talk about Endgame spoilers now. Like there's, anyways.
Yes.
What was it? So there was that, and then there was the movies that kind of, and then of course, protecting John Connor in like 2 and 3.
Yes.
And then 4 was protecting him
in the future.
Then 4 was like a present day one, like so John Connor meets whoever his wife is supposed to be.
Oh, right. I remember now. Yes.
So then he goes back and saves them.
That was a shit episode.
And then Judgment Day happens, and then there was like another one. That
was set in the future.
In the future, where Christian Bale he's already John Connor as we know him.
Yes.
Now he's dealing with other Terminators.
Yes.
And then there was Genesis, which is like some time loop shit.
Yes.
And now it's like, oh, let's go back again to Sarah Connor. What?
Yes. It's a huge mess. And I mean, this is, I mean, if we're talking about movies, things are really grim, but this is the problem when you start fucking with the canon, because you're jumping from timeline to timeline, back and forth and stuff. And there is the TV series. I don't know if that counts as canon or not. Did you see the Sarah Connor Chronicles?
No.
It had that actress, Summer Gould, I think. Or she played in Firefly as the artistic girl. She's
artistic
notorious.
Or autistic?
In Firefly, she played the girl, River Song. Not River Song. Fuck, I can't remember. That was a Doctor Who reference. But anyway, she has a notorious reputation. Every TV series she's ever been in has been cancelled. So, needless to say, I think this Sarah Connor got 2 seasons and then it was cancelled. But they tried this stint before with a female Terminator kind of thing in the TV series. And, she kind of... There's like a sexual tension between her and John Connor in the TV series. It was very weird.
Summer Glau,
that's her name. The TV series was weird, but a lot of these plots are actually from the TV series, which kind of fucking sucks. It shows that Hollywood is completely run out of ideas.
Oh, look. Sarah Connor, played by Lena Headey, who played Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones. See, you're not going to know her from that. You're going to know her from Game of Thrones.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, she was the young, the girl.
She was Sarah Connor.
Time travel.
No.
Which one?
Emilia Clarke was in Genesis as the young Sarah Connor.
Right,
I'm saying from the Sarah Connor Chronicles, it's now that's funny too. 2 Game of Thrones actresses in Terminator related, TV and movie content.
Don't get me started on X-Men, right? Because the whole fucking cast is from Game of Thrones, right? So
no, I'm thinking.
yeah. The time travel one they had pretty much the whole cast is in it. It's pretty wild.
Patrick Stewart wasn't in Game of Thrones.
No, this is when there was like the young versions.
Oh, First Class?
I can't remember. I don't. X-Men is like the least of my.
Michael Fassbender wasn't in Game of Thrones.
No, who is the dwarf? What's his name again?
Oh, Peter Dinklage. Okay, so they had Peter Dinklage. They had him. Oh, and
the
they also
Stark
had
chick. She was the
Sophie Turner. Yeah,
she was in it. Who else? Who was the Mystique? No, the Mystique was
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, whoever. Anyway, I mean, let's not divert off into movie land. We could spend all day talking about that. I did want to touch on somebody we both know was recently announced his nuptials, and
yes,
yeah, I don't want to give too much away because he wants to make his final official announcements and stuff like that.
Moment of silence.
Moment of silence for our lost comrade. Okay, that's enough. And
oh man.
But his situation is kind of unique. He's marrying a foreign lady. Let's just say that. And for the first time, he's kind of come to terms with what marriage actually means, right? That, especially in the UK, at least, she is instantly entitled to 50% of his assets. As the commentator on the article said, the moment the ink dries on the marriage certificate, she is entitled to 50% of his assets. And I thought we'd take this opportunity to kind of discuss the issue of marriage and marriage law, and basically how it's, fucking men up the ass, right? Hopefully with a lube.
I was gonna say without lube, though. We know that.
Oh yeah, we got to do it raw, isn't that right, Conk? But yeah, this is the situation. Now I know you know who I'm talking about. I know you have some insight into the situation. So
yeah,
don't give anything away.
Man, what the hell was he thinking? Insights into it. I mean, from what so he has read The Rational Male. We know this.
He's read The Rational Male. He's also read The Tactical Guide to Women.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he has like a personal friend who helps a lot of these guys with foreign wives, and that guy gave him advice as well. I don't know at what point he just didn't.
I mean, he has also had past experiences with women that should also get him to be a little bit cleared up in the head to kind of go, hey, making.
Yeah, he's had enough experience that he.
So for those of you in the chat, and Conk was asking who are we talking about. It's no one you know, Conk. It's someone only Brook and I would know.
Yes.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, he has gotten married, and it was in not the best circumstances, and he's had experiences that should tell him that this is. It's not that he can't get married. It's just the way he went about it and who he's marrying. It just seemed to be way out of nowhere and very, very foolhardy.
I mean, I can't say that. He was definitely eager. I don't know if he's eager, but let's just say it was quick. It probably happened a lot faster than anybody anticipated, to the point where I don't think he stopped to really think about what he was getting involved in. In fact, I know that.
Well, we talked about there were other factors that came up.
Correct.
That he should have seen as red flags. As our friend Richard Cooper likes to say, more red flags than the Chinese Communist Parade.
Sure.
I'd like to say more red flags. So many red flags that the communists would be proud, Right.
I mean, I don't think we should really get into his specifics, but we're talking about marriage in general.
Oh, marriage.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, right? Like I was trying to explain to not him, but somebody else actually, that marriage in the UK is a disaster. So I had a girlfriend. This was an issue that she and I would butt heads about quite often, right? So she would ask about, possibly getting married and whatever. And I was like, yeah, that's great. I don't mind if you want to do a ceremony and all this other stuff, but I'm not signing any documents for the state, right? And this, of course, was a bone of contention. Now, in the UK, we have something called civil partnerships. I think you all have it in the US as well. More specifically for like homosexual and lesbian couple.
That was the first sort of the first step towards legalizing gay marriage, was like domestic partnerships.
Something, right? So domestic partnerships is probably the US equivalent. And we actually had a heterosexual couple, sue the government because the civil partnership was sexist or discriminatory against heterosexual couples.
Oh,
right. And they won. They won. Right. So now in the UK, you can do what's called like a civil union. And apparently it offers more protections than the marriage, because if it's classified as a marriage, it falls under, the divorce corporation litany of litigation that, anti-men, sort of thing. You're in that camp. But
Mhm.
there's not a lot of that on the civil partnership side. So it's apparently, and I'm no expert, more equitable for now. I'm sure as soon as the feminists find out, they will dig their claws in and they will start screeching and change that. But for the time being, that's kind of the only escape. But it's such a nightmare. It's such a nightmare. And, I have a couple of friends who've gone down this road and now they're realizing how bad these laws really are.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about. I don't know if we've talked about this here on the show. Would you get married, Brooke?
I would like to, if I could find a way that I can do it, protecting my assets and my downside. And there are ways to do it, probably like moving to Russia, right? Or like Poland or something where there's kind of a little bit of, favoritism towards men still kind of thing. Possibly. And I think Scandinavia is Norway, not Sweden, but Norway, apparently it's pretty amicable divorce law. But of course, that could change at any moment. So maybe that's why I'm looking at Russians. Russians are pretty hot, aren't they?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I don't know if I could put up with that much cold, but it might be worth it not to get divorce raped up the ass. So
Maybe you just got to come to Minnesota.
the divorce laws in the US, though, bro. It's like,
Yeah.
if the courts don't get you, the lawyers will.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't you go? I mean, couldn't you go down the route of a private marriage with a contract and just have the other person change your name?
I think that is such a thing, and some people have considered that. But unfortunately, in the UK and some states in the US, that will fall under common law marriage. And the minute you get that designation, you fall under the meat grinder of all the marriage and divorce laws.
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I was there for my parents' divorce when I was a young man, probably like 13, 14, somewhere around there. And I was in the divorce court and I watched. Now, this is in Trinidad and Tobago. I watched these couples tear each other to shreds in that courtroom. And I sat there, and the only thing that came to mind was, at one point in these people's relationship, they loved each other and they decided to get married. And I looked at it, the animosity, the venom that was being spewed. And that profoundly changed my perspective. And I realized, like, yeah, this is pretty fucked up. So, I mean, there's the vetting side, I think, is hugely important. And for anybody who's listening, we definitely recommend the Tactical Guide to Women. And there's one for women as well. I think I like the ways to vet a husband or something like that. He's written two, one for men and for women. But the vetting is huge. But also, if you're going to take the plunge, you need to understand the marriage laws and divorce laws in that particular country.
Yeah, it's just not. That's the thing is, did we talk about? Well, I don't think I said on here what happened with not a university student.
I don't know. Do tell.
Well, I mean, you already know this, but we haven't been seeing each other for a few weeks now, and we just
Cool.
decided.
You
Not
and
a,
not a university student?
Yeah. We were seeing each other for a month. She stayed the night once, and just kind of a dumb. It's not you, it's me kind of thing. That's what I really think it is.
Right.
And I mean, we talked about this. There's possibly somewhere. It's just, I'm still learning, figuring out red pill stuff, and somewhere I probably, just compromise the frame.
Right.
So, and with that, I mean, very early on, we had the meta conversation about family and marriage and all this stuff, like how I'd go about raising a child, what kind of life I want to build for whoever comes into my life and such. And I just was just laying down a lot of stuff on, like, marriage statistics, divorce and assets and all this stuff. And yeah, it was every time I talk about it, especially with someone in that context, it was interesting to kind of have me kind of get to also explore that on my own again. Do I really believe what I'm saying, kind of thing? How do I, because it's definitely changed. I'm not sort of as hardline as maybe like some guys in the red pill community are. Just, no marriage, LTRs for life, having like everything's a contract, everything is protected, and there's no, like, you can't just have quote unquote a normal marriage. It's like, I do want to marry someone, but I do want to be protected. I do want to have kids. And I do believe you can legitimately fall in love with someone.
Yes.
But the laws have completely fucked up the culture, and feminism has fucked up women. And you can't just do that, as easily.
I agree. I don't know. There was a very good video with Rollo Tomasi and a UK pickup artist. I can't remember his name off the top of my head though.
Oh, yeah, he was wanting to get married.
Correct. And in the conversation, I sent you the link for it. I don't know if you watched it or not. You can see Rollo's response, like his reaction to this guy. So this guy, I think he's in his probably late 30s, maybe early 40s, married before, divorced, got into the pickup game, very successful at it. Now he's at the point where he literally says he's looking to get married. And he says that to Rollo, and Rollo's response is like real marriage? Like, you actually want to do the ceremony? And it was actually quite comical to watch because, Rollo is one of the first people to kind of say, look, that's a very big risk. It's not really worth it. And this guy basically said, look, because of his experience, in the red pill community, as well as being married before and, his experience now, he could probably vet them a lot better to make the odds of a second marriage, more successful. And ironically, and I was so looking forward to Rollo kind of giving a response, he didn't. Rollo did not give a response. He just kind of rolled it off like, all right, and they moved on to something else. But you could see the look on his face like, you must be crazy, right? Rollo was giving him the look. But I think for most men, yeah, the idea of a family is an important, part of our, desires and stuff like that. I would love to get married if first I found somebody, that I could, and it's good. And if I found somewhere that wasn't going to fuck me over. Like I don't mind if it's Russia. I don't mind moving to Russia. I mean, I got no attachment to anything, but it's that those have to be the criteria.
Nick Krauser.
Yeah, that's him. I think that's him. Yeah. That was the pickup artist guy.
Yeah, I just found it. So, yeah, that's the thing is still, love to get married at some point. Still would love to have kids. Still would have, want my name and my legacy to be passed down through, kids.
I mean, save having a couple $1 million and hiring a surrogate to have kids with, which I think is kind of the only safe option.
There have been games, like video games and such that I've played where like kind of like a Sims type thing.
Yeah.
Where owls like get really red pilled in that. I'll just like, find a chick, pop a kid out of her, and kick her out of the house. Because the Sims doesn't really do that. It doesn't really follow marriage. Where my main goal in the game is to have a boy to pass on through.
Yeah. I'm looking to crank out 3 boys and maybe 1 girl after that, but definitely 3 boys. And you got to make sure the line is secure, One might die, one might be gay. So, you got a 1 in 3 chance.
Oh my God. I even talked about that though with this not a university student. She was like, we got to talking about things like that. Like, it's interesting with raising a family, having kids, the way just typical troubles or worries that parents have about their kids are seen as bigoted.
Yes.
The whole thing with like gender neutral toys or clothes or identifications, putting X on the birth certificate, and I told her like, and so she works with kids. And I would tell her, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with a father to say, I don't want my son to be gay.
Right.
It's not, and it's like, it's because there's lots of reasons. Either you don't want them to be ostracized. Like, you can still love your kids if they're gay. I'm not saying you can't. It's just,
Sure.
but you don't want them to be ostracized, or you want them to have kids so that your name passes on, or you don't know how to handle that. I don't know. There's a lot of things about that, and it's really like I try not to get too much into like, the left is trying to destroy the West, the family, but then you get to things like this, and I can't help but think that.
I mean, even I mean, I don't know how many homosexual couples you know, but if you speak to homosexual couples who do have kids, either through adoption or from a previous relationship or whatever, they will tell you point blank that they do not wish their kids to be gay. And it doesn't mean they don't, if their kids are gay, it's fine. But they say it's such a small minority of the population. They worry that their kids are not going to have the opportunity to find love.
Yeah.
Because there's, so that's not a bigoted thing to say. That homosexual parents actually share that concern in some regard. And I mean, just to be fair, I mean, heterosexual couples and marriage is on the decline as it is. So it's hard enough, right? We got the rise of MGTOW, incels, the whole nine. And if you're dealing with such a small minority of the population as well, the homosexual, lesbian, gay, GIPQRST, that in itself, you're so cut off from so many options for relationship and stuff like that. I could understand a parent saying, for that reason, I'd prefer if my kids were straight. At least they've got a better shot of finding love and other things like that.
I think I told you about this, Kevin Hart.
He got in trouble for his tweet or something.
Well, he had a whole clip where I think we talked about this, right? He doesn't want his kid to grow up to be gay.
I think so, yeah. And he got cut from the Oscars or the Emmys or something for his comment.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think so, yeah. But there's, he's had bits in his comedy where he's like, kids doing stupid stuff, and kids will like just do stuff that's kind of gay, and then he just talks about situations where he freaks out and he slaps his kid and like, stop, that's gay.
I mean, I was in Northern Ireland with a friend of mine. You know him as well. He is a homosexual. But I mean, he's such a cool guy, right? We're in the cinema. We're watching a commercial, and there's some kind of new drink that's like you could drink it from both ends. You could unscrew it from both ends, and like the two people come, and it basically looks like they're choking on a dildo. And I turned to him and was like, "That's gay," and he's like, "Yeah, that's really gay." Such a cool guy.
But this guy though also likes Asian women, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give away all of his secrets, but yes. we might take him to Thailand. We'll see.
Well, are you saying you'll straighten him out?
Well, if he wants a chance at that, maybe, because he's a great guy. He wants to be a dad and stuff like that. And if it doesn't work out one way, he might do it another way. But yeah, let's not get too much into his personal stuff. So.
Oh no problem. All right. Anything else you want to add quick before we get out of here?
No. I think we did good for our second show of the new name. So I think that's
10K
cool.
Rum, man. I mean, for the next month almost, we have guests.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
We have your friend next week.
Yes, Darko.
Tell us just a quick little bit about him as a little teaser for next week.
Yeah, Darko. He's probably only going to be able to join us for an hour, but you and I will probably fill up the back end. He's a trader. He works for a company called forexmentor.com, and he's probably one of the best pattern traders in the world. And the reason we're having him on is that, you know, some men are looking for side hustles. They're looking for ways to make extra money and stuff like that. He has his own podcast as well. I can't remember it offhand, but he talks about the mentality, and it's a very interesting story. He's a Indian gentleman living in Sweden. I believe he works in law enforcement or something like that, married with kids. And he has such a dedication to this, to the trading lifestyle and learning the system and stuff. It took him eight years to kind of figure it out. And it's just such an inspiring story. So he's going to be joining us next week, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, to share his story and some insight into what he does now and how he looks at the markets and how people might want to make some extra money on the side, how they can do that.
Right. Yeah. Heck, I might get to learn a little something too.
You might.
But thank everyone for joining us today for the show. Do leave a comment, do like the video, subscribe to the channel, or of course subscribe to us on iTunes. Google Play Podcasts hold us now. So if you go into most of your podcasting platforms, type in the 10K Rum Podcast through Google Play, it goes through that. So we're on there. Or just go to podbean.com, search for our podcast there. You can listen to it there too. They have an app where you can access a lot of podcasts through there. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Do join us next week, Sunday, 11 a.m. Central Time, with our special guest, Darko. So
absolutely
awesome. So thanks again for watching, guys, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for watching, everyone.